Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video I'd like to talk to you even further about the current fight that's happening between the US on the one side and China on the other side. So we've already seen US pressure regarding Huawei, and we've seen now US pushing a ban towards TikTok. But that same ban is also being pushed towards this app called WeChat. And you might know that much less than Huawei and TikTok, but that doesn't mean that it's of any lesser importance. It might be even of more importance, especially if you think about the impact that this ban might have on the Chinese people living abroad and on people who might have all sorts of other ties with China, business ties, but for example also friendship or family ties. So what you need to understand here is that WeChat as an app is something different than we mainly know here in the West. It is an integration of so many things, and WeChat in that sense actually became a platform. So you can, message on it, but it also is a social media platform, like for example Facebook. It also offers payment services, like for example PayPal, or it can replace your credit card, like for example Visa and MasterCard, right? It is an important news source. At the same time, you have a lot of mini apps on it that you can, for example, play games with, but also, for example, that you can get information about, for example, COVID-19. So in that regard, it also has important apps that connect the population to, for example, the government and vice versa. It also has an important channel for a lot of businesses and again lots of government-related organizations to have contacts with the people. Yes, the company behind it, Tencent, is of private origin, but that doesn't mean that this app is not an official channel for many organizations and businesses. It actually is. So if you think about it, the Chinese and people, one way or another, having stakes, interests, ties with China, are basically doing everything on WeChat. And this makes that, even though this app has never really become a global success, it is actually a bridge between China on the one side and people outside China, but that want to have connection with China one way or another. And it won't surprise you that these are many, many people. So why is this the case? Why is this a bridge, and why are there not any, let's say, alternatives to it, substitutes to it? So one thing is, of course, that it's so integrated and that we don't have anything else that's really that integrated on which you can do everything. So it's ease of use and, of course, getting used to it. On top of this, of course, also network effects, right? So a lot of people are already using it. You would need to have so many people leaving WeChat to all sorts of different apps at the same time, again, because it's integrated, to be able to maintain their connections with people outside the US. At the same time, people outside the US would have to force people in China, again, to switch to all of these apps that they are using to replace all of the things that WeChat is doing at the same time. And this is, of course, tremendous hassle, and a lot of people won't be willing to do this, and this means that or they will have a lot of difficulties to do it. They might not figure it out how to do it because of their age. Lots of businesses might look for alternatives, and this way US companies might, for example, lose a lot of business opportunities, and so on. And a big reason behind all of these problems is, of course, China's policy towards US firms and US services. So a lot of US businesses, US services, applications, devices, and so on are banned in China. So there's also actually not that much of an alternative, even if people want to be in touch with people outside of China, other than, for example, WeChat. So one of the most interesting alternative opportunities here is Apple and its iMessage application. But the problem here is, of course, that you need to have an iPhone, and not everyone can afford one. Not everyone wants to buy one. And again, this brings important complications. So why is then Trump still pushing this through? Well, it's similar argument that Trump also made towards Huawei and towards TikTok, being that it's a security threat, right? So Trump is saying that WeChat's information regarding US people, US citizens, or people living in the US, it can be acquired, it can be utilized for bad reasons, bad purposes by China. And this particularly Trump is saying, US government saying, is because data centers would be in China and China would easily have access to it. WeChat denies this, saying that US data is stored on data centers outside of China. And the question is, of course, whether this is true. On top of this, there have been a lot of accusations towards WeChat in that it is helping China censor the Chinese people, for example, also abroad, and this way it would actually help China spy on the Chinese diaspora. And the question is, of course, whether this is true or not. And if it is true, then of course is again an important reason to ban it if you can't have control over the data. So one thing that TikTok is doing in this regard is opening, for example, data centers outside China. It is now opening one, for example, in Europe to prevent also the EU from banning TikTok, just like the US wants to do this. WeChat already has some, but is still facing such a ban. So one thing that we talked about is, of course, that TikTok has to be bought, at least for its US operations, to be able to maintain its operations. Microsoft is one of the most important contenders in this regard, as we talked about in one of the previous videos. And we might see something similar here for WeChat. It either has to be bought in this regard by someone in the US, or US will have to relax its conditions, or US one way or another has to get control of US data. Otherwise, it doesn't seem likely that WeChat will be able to continue its operation. So one interesting thing in this regard is that, this ban might actually be hurting Apple a lot in China. So not just because of tit for tat banning. So I mean, US banned WeChat, so we're going to ban one of the US companies. So it doesn't even have to be something like this. So think about it. If the Chinese can't download WeChat anymore on an Apple device, if they can't access it via iOS, or, for example, Android, because this is also one of the things that, of course, President Trump is thinking about, that the US government is thinking about, restricting access also on US devices and US based platforms, systems, application stores, such as the Apple Store or such as Google Play Store. So if the Chinese can't access these, they might be less interested in, again, Android-based systems and, again, iOS-based systems. And Apple, being one of the companies that has major traction in China, relatively speaking, means that people might ditch their Apple phones, at least future purchases, because there's no benefit in it, because they need to continue to use WeChat. Because this ban is, of course, only going to affect US-China transactions, financial transactions, business trades, whatever. But not that much life in China itself, and most people's life happens, of course, inside China. Because of that, people will prefer using WeChat over preferring to use their Apple device. They might ditch it, and this might, of course, lead to a major decline in sales of Apple devices and Apple services. Same thing will happen also to, for example, Android, but it does not have that big of a stake. There are some other alternatives as well, and of course, Android is not, Google through Android is not really selling devices. So people will find workarounds around that, or at least Google will not be affected that much because it's not that much exposed to the Chinese market. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if so, please don't forget to hit the like and the subscribe buttons. I wish you all the best in the world and hope to see you again in future videos. Take care.